good morning to my friends and colleagues. Marcellus says something is rotten in the state of Denmark, and I want to check that statement. During the war, Denmark was occupied by Nazi Germany in a military operation that lasted exactly 105 minutes. And we can see why. It's not evil forces, no. A post-war myth created a false perception of a nation characterized by unity and national solidarity opposing the Nazi occupiers. That was an illusion that would survive for years. But in the 1960s, a very critical view was presented of the Danish officialdom's policy of political and economic collaboration with the Germans. This is the Danish Prime Minister and the German plenipotentiary. They were meeting to tea sometimes. The eminent Danish historian Kirchhoff has described a counter-myth that has evolved in very harsh words. It is the great myth turned upside down. A despicable and egoistic little nation cozily enjoying high prices for their bacon and having lots of calories on the table while the whole world outside was in flames. Absolutely unjustified, thanks to their farmers' slyness. They succeeded in saving themselves by jumping over the fence to the right side at 5 minutes to 12. In an earlier study, I have shown that during the period of German occupation of Denmark during World War II, the Danish physicians and students of medicine behaved in an exceptionally commendable manner. They were the relatively earliest and largest professional group in the resistance movements, and they were instrumental in saving the Danish Jewry from Nazi persecution by organizing their escape to neighboring Sweden. 29 physicians or students of medicine were killed in action or murdered by the Germans. It was shown by applying the construct of personal values that the personal value system of the Danish physicians and medical students was dominated by pro-social values internalized during the formative years. But in this presentation, however, we shall focus on the elements of the Danish medical sphere who chose to align with the Nazi occupiers as sort of medical traitors. The names of 20 physicians were found in the members list of the archives of the ridiculously tiny Danish Nazi party, including the pathetic party chairman or Führer, Dr. Fritz Clausen, a general practitioner from the southern part of Denmark. But furthermore, it was found that 15 Danish physicians had transgressed the red line that separated between passive and active cooperation with Nazi Germany, thus characterizing their behavior as outright treason, although the polite and politically correct Danes preferred the term unnational conduct. In the following, I wish to present a few case reports. Dr. Charles Hindborg, he was chief physician at a minor provincial hospital north of Copenhagen. He joined the Nazi Party in 1938 and became politically active. He became a member of the party's Grand Council and was commissioned as leader for people's health and racial research. In addition, he headed the party's Office for Genealogy, which, apart from issuing Aryan certificates, gathered information about Jewish families and reported to the Gestapo. In 1945, he was sentenced to 3 years in jail, plus loss of civil rights for 5 additional years. He was released in 1948 and emigrated to Spain. Dr. Bissing, a general practitioner who served as a medical officer in the Danish military, joined the Nazi Party in 1940, and in 1942, he volunteered for the Danish Freikorps. Those are Danes, and you see the Danish flag. This corps was unique among legions of foreign volunteers fighting for Hitler in that it carried the official sanction of its home government. Unbelievable, but true. In 1942, Wissing served with an SS police division at the Pustkov concentration camp in Poland. About 15,000 inmates found their death in this camp, including 7,500 Polish Jews, mostly from Krakow. He was later transferred to a Lebensborn facility, eventually returned to Denmark to serve in the hated Schalbro Corps of Danish SS volunteers performing terror actions against the Danish population. He was sentenced to 4 years imprisonment, loss of civil rights for 5 years, but already in 1950 he settled down as a general practitioner. We don't know exactly how that happened. Dr. Emil Petersen, who was employed at the same hospital as the former Dr. Hinberg, he joined the Nazi Party in 1939, became involved in organizational work, and he volunteered for the SS Medical Service with the rank of Hauptsturmführer, which is a captain. In 1942, he was transferred to the SS Lazarette in Krakow, where experiments were performed on inmates from the ghetto and from the Pustkov camp. Now, he also had a friend, a nice-looking Luftwaffe doctor. Here he is only a lieutenant. But we also know him from his freezing experiments in Dachau. That's Sigmund Raschel. And Dr. Petersen organized the supply of a preparation called Vasodil, made by a Danish pharmaceutical company. This could prevent freezing damage to tissues. They were to be, of course, included in the experiment. Dr. Petersen was tried in 1947, and he received a very light sentence due to difficulties in obtaining sufficient evidence at that time. In 1948, when new evidence began to arrive from Germany, he emigrated quickly to Brazil. But in 1950, he was identified in Denmark, making money by extracting teeth. He was, for some reason, never arrested again and was killed in an auto accident. Our star is undoubtedly Dr. Karl Peter Werner, who has been, it's a kind of overstatement, it's been called the Danish Mengele. He established in 1924 a general practice in a suburb of Copenhagen and also specialized in shortwave therapy, which he advertised could cure anything, including cancer. He was very successful, but in the 1930s he began to show interest in hormonal therapy. He believed in the theory, many did at that time, that male homosexuality was due to deficiency of testosterone, and he invented and patented a slow-release capsule made of perforated gold plate to be implanted in the inguinal region of the patient. He made an extensive advertising campaign for his Wonder Gland, describing imagined positive results of a series of cases. He was soon hung out in public as a quack by the Danish Medical Association. This fact did not reduce the stream of patients. In 1940, he joined the Danish Nazi Party, and when he became known as a convinced Nazi, the patients disappeared, and he became entangled in severe financial problems, and was, of course, ostracized by the Danish medical community. Through a common friend, he gained contact with the nice-looking Dr. Gravitz, who was the chief SS, the SS chief physician, and he reported to Himmler that we've got something about the homosexuals. And Himmler was, of course, interested in anything who could cure the German folk of this terrible ailment of homosexuality. Paragraph 175 of the German Criminal Code was since 1871, made it a crime to be a male homosexual. It was revoked in 1994, by the way. Himmler once noted in one of his speeches, "All things which take place in the sexual sphere are not private, but signify the life and death of the nation, and consequently, tens of thousands of male homosexuals were interned in concentration camps. An estimated 60% died in the camps. Wernet was accepted into the SS medical service with the rank of Sturmbannführer, that's a major, and was permitted to perform his fictitious experiments on male homosexual inmates in Buchenwald, and the positive result, falsified of course, was reported to Himmler, was very happy about that. Wernet was arrested in Copenhagen after the war, but succeeded, assisted by a few of his colleagues, to escape to Argentina, where he settled down as a successful practitioner with the knowledge of President Perón through the local Minister of Health. But there were more additional traces of Denmark in the medical barracks at Buchenwald. Horrific experiments by the infamous Dr. Ding Schuler, in which inmates were infected with live typhus rickettsia to test possibly effective vaccines against the disease, made use of a substance developed and most readily supplied by the Danish State Serum Institute in Copenhagen. The vials were appropriately marked Copenhagen. The Red Cross is the largest humanitarian network in the world. Its mission is to alleviate human suffering, protect life and health, and so on. And generally, one tends to connect the icon of the Red Cross, as we see it on ambulances and armlets of medics, with medical assistance. Thus, I include it as at least a paramedical body. During the war, it was headed by this gentleman, Helmer Rosting, who was expressively pro-Nazi. Under his leadership, the organization refused to assist in providing emergency relief to ghettos in Poland and or other Jewish populations. He was on the Danish Nazi party's, although he wasn't a member, he was on the shadow cabinet list should the Nazi party ever take over the Danish government. And in 1943, he suggested on his own initiative to the German plenipotentiary in Denmark, Dr. Werner Best, that the Danish Jews should be incarcerated in a local concentration camp and then be used as hostages against the actions of the Danish resistance. When 480 Danish Jews were apprehended and deported to Theresienstadt concentration camp, Rosting refused to answer a call from the Danish Ministry of Social Affairs to let the Red Cross deliver food and medicine funded by the ministry to the deported Jews because they were not prisoners of war. After the war, he was immediately detained, but he committed suicide when he was temporarily released. On May the 4th, 2005, at the celebration of the 60th anniversary of Denmark's liberation, Prime Minister Fogh Rasmussen of the Danish Liberal Party did something that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. He presented an official apology to the Jewish people for the Danish expulsions of Jewish refugees to Germany from 1940 to 1943. Thus, he became the first Danish head of state to directly address this matter, which contrasts so greatly with the rescue of Jews in 1943 and the alleged advantages of the cooperation policy. An apology cannot alter history, but it can contribute to the recognition of historic mistakes. Denmark became famous for having saved its Jewry from Nazi persecution. But it's imperative to note that the Danish Jews were saved by the Danish people, among whom the majority of the physicians played an instrumental role, while the Danish officialdom and several other physicians had much to account for. It has been said, and I tend to agree, that post-war Denmark, to a certain degree, used the rescue of the Jews as a fig leaf to cover its shame. to cover the fact that something indeed was rotten in the state of the cooperating Denmark, including some very rotten, indecent, and morally decayed health professionals. I think he was right. Thank you.